Okay, so we will have a record if anyone needs it or wants it.
And what's happened to my video?
Okay. We have a goodly number of people. 27 participants according to Zoom. And since Charlie will continue to let people in as they come, I'm going to go ahead with a brief introduction. So we have all of the candidates for this election cycle here today. That's John Compton running for mayor, and for council, Daryl Anderson, Pat Klein, and Eva Patron. And each of them are going to have an opportunity to introduce themselves for 3 minutes. And I did want to let everyone know that Betsy is our timekeeper. So she will give a brief bell ring at like a 30-second warning signal. Betsy?
Did you hear that?
Okay, there we go. And we'll also let you know when either the 3-minute or the 2 minutes for speaking are up. Okay. I believe we invited all of the current council members, and I can't see everybody, but that should be in addition to our candidates. That's Barbara Raimondo, David Kassan, Christine Dibble, and I'm missing somebody.
On and Daryl's on.
Yeah, but Daryl and Pat,
Gray,
sitting council members who are running.
it's Gray.
Gray, yes.
Yeah, Gray.
Okay. So, okay. Let's start with our esteemed mayor for the introduction process.
Hi. Well, thanks to the committee for putting together, the volunteers putting this forum together. It's become pretty much expected activity, very helpful for, well, to introduce new people to all the residents, but also to really to offer a chance to ask questions that may be of importance to individuals here in town. So, as far as most everyone knows me, I've been mayor for 4 years. This will be the 5th one in this cycle. Previously 9 years, and I believe I'm still a strong candidate to serve in that office. Most of you know that my philosophy about being mayor or even serving as an elected official in Washington Grove is several-fold, principle of which is a willingness to put the time in, of course, since we're all volunteers. But even more important is the importance of working together and examining all of the issues in as fair way and as inclusive a way as we can. Since we're a small town, most of us know each other, we will know each other. And it's most important that those of us who are in this position are serving everyone and doing so in a cooperative way. That said, my particular strength, I think, or at least I like to think so, is I believe that the town, the mayor, in addition to the role as enforcement officer and financial officer, those important things, also is really the one who is facilitates final action or obtaining a consensus and getting some things done that can be challenging to get across the finish line. I think I'm pretty good at doing that, and hopefully everyone believes that I'm a fair and able. So I'll leave it at that. You have in my candidate statement some of the issues I think that are important in coming year, and we're going to get to those shortly. So thanks, and then let's hear from the rest of the candidates.
Well, that's lovely, John. Thank you. And I'm just going to go by seniority on the candidates. So we'll start with Daryl.
Okay, thank you, Georgette. And also thanks to the committee, as John said. Hi, my name's Daryl Anderson. I have lived in the Grove now 30 years. I've been involved in committees first, and then the town council, and then as mayor, and now back on as the council for about the last 23 years, I think. Anyway, no matter who was on the council, through all those years and as being mayor, there's always challenges, things that come up every term that we have to deal with, and we have to deal with it both externally and internally. Some of the things, going all the way back to the 7-Eleven debacle, the field, the conservation meadow, and one thing, the Humpback Bridge, which we have saved through working with the county, working with our neighbors in Gaithersburg, Sidney Katz, and CSX, all because the Panama Canal opened up, and they wanted to move boats through the Panama Canal to the East Coast, put them on trains, send them out to the East Coast and Midwest, but we had an obstacle, the Humpback Bridge. This is historical for people who don't know. And we worked with them to try, they wanted to tear it down and build us a $20 million 4-lane bridge to connect Oakmont with Gaithersburg. We fought that because of the historic nature of the bridge, although it's not technically in town. And through that process, we worked with everybody, our neighbors in town, and they ended up just raising the bridge 3 inches, 3.5 inches, which was to solve the case. And the reason to raise the bridge was they wanted to do double stacked trains, which I've yet to see any go by, but maybe there are. Anyway, those are the kind of challenges, and we have challenges coming up this next term also. I view my focus on the council, my vision, I guess, is to work with neighboring communities on issues, our issues, and working on their issues. Specifically right now, I think the Walnut Hill community, which abuts us, is going through a redevelopment of their shopping center, and I think we need to be involved in that, although it doesn't seem like it's going to affect us that much. It will. I also think that we need to work together internally to make sure that, is that the bell?
Yeah, yes.
To try to get to protect what we have designated in the National Historic designation that we have. We need to keep that up. We also need I can bring a positive tenor to the council. I listen to people. In my term as chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Party, I had 500,000 constituents, and they all had their own little issues. I'm used to working outside, and we're going to need those political people for our issues. So I hope you'll vote for me, and I hope you'll get more involved. That's one of my other things, is to make sure we have enough volunteers and enough people who are willing to work to make the. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Much appreciated. And moving on then to Pat Klein.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pat Klein, and I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm also thankful for you taking the time on a nice rainy Saturday afternoon to be with us. I've lived in the Grove for 26 years now, so just a little shy of Daryl and some others. I still feel like I'm a newcomer. But our roots are getting deeper every year, I guess. When I first arrived in the Grove, I thought I landed in Shangri-La. I didn't even know Washington Grove existed all those years ago. And I had moved up to this part of Montgomery County when I started working for Humane Society of the United States at that time. Before, I was living over in PG County in the Laurel Bowie area, because I was then working for the Fish and Wildlife Service. And I had made a decision to change my jobs, and I came up here to work with the Humane Society of the United States as their veterinarian, which was a very fascinating experience. And even this morning, I had a chance to sort of reconnect with an older colleague, John Griffin, as we were talking about some issues with living with wild neighbors. It's been sort of my theme of my career, is to connect dots and to build relationships. And as I worked through my career, I worked mostly in the federal agencies. I worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service initially, and I worked for USDA, and both of those had to do with animal health issues, working mostly at the national level, but trying to prevent and control diseases both in wild animals and domestic livestock. And the reason I bring that up is because I also spent time working in the US Public Health Service and the public health arena, and looking at the public health issues. And now I work for the Forest Service, and I work on environmental health issues. So health has been my career, and also connecting the dots and where I see how things integrate and how things relate to one another. And the reason I bring that to your attention is because I feel that's one of my strengths and assets, is when I see issues, and we have a lot of controversial issues like every place else, but we have to realize and focus on, and I hope to do that, is to focus on what unites us rather than what divides us. And that's part of how I've looked through my career at making those connections, looking at how to do problem solving, but it requires time, and it requires energy, and it requires input.
30 seconds.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So I do wear multiple hats. I'm comfortable doing that because a lot of us in the town do work on multiple committees, or work with the town council, work on commissions. And I think that that's actually an asset. The fact that we can wear multiple hats and also integrate our knowledge with the input of the town residents. So as we go forward together, and I do hope you'll support my coming back onto the council again and continuing having the continuity to continue working on a lot of these issues, is to be open-minded, to listen to all sides, to gather the information objectively. And this is how government should be working for you. That's one of the things I bring to it, is understanding how government serves everybody. So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Pat. And now we'll hear from Eva Patron. She's the newest comer to would be the newest comer to the council. And at this point, I believe you've already been a resident for several years, haven't you, Eva? Yes, and it's amazing how fast the time goes. So welcome. Oh, and you are muted.
There we go. Thank you so much, Georgette. Yeah, so my husband and I moved here in 2018. Like Patty, we didn't even know Washington Grove existed until the house popped up on our listing, and we love it. We have two young children, Phoebe, who's 5, and Violet, who's 2. And just a little background about me. I have a degree from William and Mary in psychology and math, and I'm a former high school math teacher, most recently the math and science department chair at the Siena School in Silver Spring. And I also have an MFA in fiction writing. So these days I'm at home taking care of the kids and working on my novel. And as far as my service to the Grove, when we first moved here, I really wanted to be, I love to walk, and I really wanted to be able to walk with my kids to the community museum in Old Town Gaithersburg, but I was terrified of crossing at Commercial Corner. So I started lobbying Montgomery County to put in a crosswalk there, and it was not easy, but you know, I had my to-do list of people to contact, and I'm a to-do list person and I like to get things done, and I was really excited to see that crosswalk finally go up there. And then I also worked on the task force for the shared use path, which was about 5 months. We were meeting once or twice a week. And I will say that I never missed a single meeting, even when I was at the beach on vacation with my family. So we put together a comprehensive fact-based report to help residents make an informed decision about the path. And I felt good about my involvement with that, and residents started asking me, oh, have you ever considered joining town council? So I started thinking about it, and you know, I know that in a volunteer-run government, you need new people to step up and you need the fresh blood to keep it going. And so I thought, you know, I can be that fresh blood. And because I am relatively new, I certainly don't know everything. I don't know the history of all the different issues, but I feel like that puts me in a good position to really listen to residents' concerns and listen to what people want, and do research and, you know, make an opinion or a decision that, you know, I don't have a lot of preconceived notions. So, you know, I'm kind of coming to this as an open book, ready to listen. I also know that on the council right now, there's nobody with young children. So even though I would obviously be representing and listening to all residents, I do bring that perspective of being a parent of young children and wanting to see the Grove thrive
30 seconds.
for, you know, for our kids. And I think that's about it. So thank you. Georgia, I think you're muted.
I had a phone call come in.
Ah.
Bad. Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Eva. Because I don't suppose that came through either, but anyway. Okay, we'll open for questions from the audience, and we're going to go with a raised Zoom hand. And since we have enough people that we're on 2 screens, it'll be a little bit hard for me to see that. So be persistent and Charlie will help me with identifying raised Zoom hands. So you can ask a single candidate, or you can ask multiple candidates, or you can ask a current office holder. And if it's a particularly good question, you've only asked one person. If another candidate particularly wants to answer that question, I'm going to allow them to, after you're done, after the current question answer is done, to see if any other candidate wants to address the question. Okay, and I see a hand from Virginia.
Okay, so am I muted? Okay, so this is a question for all 3 town councilor candidates. We had a special town meeting on the shared use bike path. Instead of the vote and balanced discussion we were expecting, there was an immediate one-sided motion followed by 3 hours of confusion of what we were exactly voting for. Do you think that there might be a fairer and more efficient way to run a special town meeting?
Since the question is being asked of all 3, Virginia, all
Yes.
4 candidates or
Oh, no, just the town councilors,
council members?
council members.
Council.
No.
Candidates.
And
And
I can answer first,
sure, go ahead, Daryl.
and this is a 1 minute or 2 minutes.
2 minute.
Okay, it won't take that long. I assume you're talking about the March 2020 or 21 meeting. And that's what resulted was the task force. I mean, there was, the task force was formed because of the concerns of people that it wasn't a fair process. And certainly, I don't know how anybody can say the task force was not a fair process.
I'm not talking about the task force. I'm talking about the meeting.
Oh, the meeting,
The meeting, yeah, the meeting that had a motion
right.
of 3 hours of confusion. And then, if anyone thinks that was spontaneous, I have a bridge to sell you.
Well, we had already had meeting after meeting after meeting.
But this was the town meeting to vote. We never got to vote.
The process was that the council had meetings with people, had input, and then this is the way most everything works. And then the council votes on to make a decision about it. I mean, this was not something unusual.
No, I'm talking about the special town meeting. Were you there?
Okay.
Yeah.
I can clarify. Virginia, you're just not being specific enough for Daryl. Or she's referring to the meeting we held in, I believe it was December, the town meeting that was in regards to the report of the task force. And then when we got to the business part, there was an immediate motion. And I believe Virginia is referencing that motion and the subsequent events.
Carl, you're on mute.
Am I mute?
No, you're okay now.
Okay. Is that what you're talking about, the December meeting?
There was only one special town meeting for the shared bike path. I don't remember exactly the date, but I don't think there's any confusion on which meeting this was. We had a special meeting. We all thought we were going to vote for A or B or C. And instead, there was an immediate one-sided motion. We spent 3 hours of torturous confusion, and we never really got to vote. And in fact, the vote that we did do was just a vote to get out of the room. Is that fair? I mean, I don't know.
I can jump in here, Virginia, because I hear what Virginia is saying, that it was a very long meeting, and there was some confusion, I think, because it was being handled according to Robert's Rules of Order, which not everybody understands. And we did vote. There was a vote at the end, but I agree, it took a long time to get there. So
but we didn't vote we voted for the motion. We never got to vote for the routes.
Well,
it was the whole point of the meeting. The whole point of the task force was to look at the route. So instead, we spent 3 hours of confusion, with cherry picking Robert's Rules of Order. And we never really, if we voted, then I think the irony is the Brown Street would have passed. However,
confusing for some residents, and I think that's something that the council should take into consideration.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe there ought to be a procedure.
I think at the end of the day, the vote was taken in favor of Brown Street. And that was something that the council didn't even have to do. The council didn't have to take a vote from residents. But I do hear your frustration. And I think that's something to consider for the next time there's a special town meeting.
I do think, if we're going to, you had the votes for Brown Street. You could have just let democracy go Instead, there was this motion, you know, you could have won cleanly, but we never got to vote. on
Virginia,
the different
Virginia,
routes.
you are not asking a question anymore.
All right, maybe so. But what would be a fair way to do this? Because it wasn't fair.
Okay, let's
May I-
let
may
one of
I?
the other candidates speak.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. I figured just as long as the candidates have a chance to weigh in. So I'll step this up into a sort of more generic situation. And I think anytime we have a town-wide meeting, a special town meeting, like any meeting, we need to actually be very clear and explain how the meeting will proceed at the very front end. Just explain the process that we're about to go into. If there are certainly things like Robert's Rules of Order, most people are not familiar enough with some of the granularity there. So at least explain some of that at the front of the meeting and introduce these ideas. And if there is going to be, sort of a question about Robert's Rules of Order, explain exactly how this is all going to work out. And there may be times in any meeting that you have to hit the pause button and just give everybody time to take a breath and catch up and then continue on to proceed. That happens typically where you just get to a point of either confusion or conflict or whatever, and you just need to sort of hit the pause button. I think as we go forward, when you're always going to have certain controversial issues to address, we need to make sure that we do run these meetings fairly, openly, make sure all the voices are heard in the room, even if it does sometimes take long, but people need to feel invested in the process. And if it does come to making motions or voting, again, it needs to be very clear as to what the motion is, what we're voting on. It takes time to make sure that everybody is going along with that meeting process.
30
And if there
seconds.
are confusions, then we need to stop and explain before we move forward. So that I will do my part. I'm going to stay on the town council, come back on the town council. I just want to let you know, I'll do my part to make sure that all voices are heard when we have these meetings, even if they tend to be a bit contentious or controversial topics. It's our role as the counselors is to make sure that we run our meetings properly and respectfully. And we really need to continue to respect one another. So I hope that helps.
Okay. So,
Can I just add, I agree that we need to have, if there were people who did not understand the clarity, that we need to make sure that we have that clarified and stipulated before, at the beginning of a meeting or whenever. I mean, yes, the town meeting form of government's messy. Special towns meetings at times have been very messy. And I think it's a good idea to make sure that everybody's on the same page before we start.
okay,
I need to make a comment. I really have to make a comment here because in saying that the town meeting form of government is a messy process, that is a very big understatement. A town meeting, any of the town meetings we hold, is not run by the town council. The town council doesn't tell the town what to do. It doesn't tell the meeting what to do. The mayor doesn't tell the meeting what to do. That's why we use Robert's Rules of Order, because the town meeting tells itself what to do, and there has to be control of the process. And I know, Virginia, absolutely, when you start to actually use Robert's Rules of Order, there's going to be about 5 people in town who understand what's going on. So generally, our town meetings are friendly discussions, or there's not a huge controversy overhanging the meeting. The meeting you're referring to, there was a huge controversy, and what happened was using Robert's Rules of Order, which is the only way you could manage a meeting like that. I mean, I have a lot to say about most of the votes that are taken on any issue. It's either for or against. You don't choose from 5 options. You either vote yes or you vote no. Now, if you want to do a vote which chooses from 5 options, that's a completely different sort of approach. So expectations aside, just handling the controversy.
30 seconds.
Anyway, you've expressed frustration, but I really think it's it boils down to if you have a controversial issue in a town meeting form of government, you must follow the rules. And only a few people understand the rules. Patty is right. It would be nice to explain the rules, but you can't anticipate.
Time.
Okay, let's try another question. Do I have any hands? Okay, I see Janet.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. One of my big concerns right now is, of course, like everybody else, what's going on with our climate. And there are a number of really, I think, good efforts going on in town to try to address ways that the town and residents can take actions to make things better. I guess I would like to address a question to the three candidates for the council and ask, first of all, what is in your background and your skills can you bring? What in your background and skills can you bring to addressing this issue and helping the town and individual residents to further efforts already going on? And how would you yourself further the efforts going on in town to increase efficiency and decrease our carbon footprint?
Okay, let's start. Eva, would you be able to start on that one?
Sure. Well, as far as my background, my husband is part of the sustainability committee, so I hear everything you guys are doing from him. And we're both very committed. When we moved into this house, we got, we put it, and I can't think of it now, but where you drill the well in and for your AC, you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so we have a more efficient house now. I think the charging stations were already decided on, but so we're going to have that to look forward to. And I think, because I was part of the task force, I am now committed to seeing the bike path through. And I think that will be huge to reduce our carbon footprint when we can get to Giant and get to the metro, by foot or by bike. So, yeah, I mean, it's something I'm not an expert, but my husband sure does read a lot about sustainability, and he can tell me all about it. So I've got that going for me.
That sounds good. I'm in much the same boat myself. Let's see, Patty?
Sure. This is one of my all-time favorite topics because many years, of course, I worked with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we did a lot of work as far as, protecting wildlife and looking at natural habitats. And even 20 plus years ago, we talked about climate change, honestly. So this is not a new topic for me. It's just kind of a resurgence of the same worries. But having worked through a lot of that, both in the federal system and also with HSUS, we did a lot of advocacy work about how to preserve habitats and keep green spaces, et cetera. Currently, of course, here in town, I'm working with the Woods Committee. I'm one of the co-chairs on the Woods Committee. We've done, 5-6 years already of trying to really save our woods preserves, because they were really in degradation. We're trying to recreate or preserve the healthy ecosystem that is going to bring in, more natural trees and carbon sequestration, which is not just trees, it's also vegetation and soil. So all the things that we're doing in our green spaces in town, I'm obviously focused on the woods, but includes everything as far as what we need to do to preserve those ecosystems. And obviously I'm in the Forest Service now in my regular day job. And that's actually part of what I work on is some of the climate change impacts and how we're working at a global level and even nationally. And then I scale down to what we can do here locally. Personally, I've already gone to geothermal HVAC system in my house several years ago. I really didn't want to get off fossil fuel as fast as I could. And I just tried to do my own part and show that I can be personally responsible. I'm also part of the sustainability group, and I'm really supporting the big picture work that we're trying to do here to make good choices for our town and how we move forward with some of our clean energy. So thank you.
Great. And Daryl?
Yeah. Yes, one of my master's degrees is in environmental science. Part of that focus was protecting the bay, more an animal, I guess saving soil, making sure that the soil is healthy, which has a whole lot to do with the growth of the trees. Because of, just because without good soil, the trees don't do well, and on and on. I supported strongly the EV stations when it first came to the council. I think that's a good way to go. A few years ago, we went off oil and put in an electric system, although we paid heavily this winter for that decision because of the price of electricity was so high. I mean, I've run programs when I was a teacher where we would spend 2 weeks in the Shenandoah Valley assessing the streams, doing on the ground tests, and then we would submit that test to the Appalachian Trail people. And it was interesting to find out how degraded certain areas were and some weren't. I've had a lifelong environmental science focus. And although I'm optimistic, pessimistic. I hope we haven't gone too
30
long.
seconds.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, good answers all. And we have a question from Jay Everhart.
Hi. In his opening remarks, Daryl mentioned the Walnut Hill Shopping Center and that the redevelopment of it. So the center is under new ownership and there will be a plan to redevelop it. I wasn't at the initial meeting this week, but I did hear about some of the discussion. This is with the new owners, and the plans were not very reassuring and were not helpful, would not be helpful for the surrounding communities. So my questions are, in what capacity should the council and the town best address our best interests for the redevelopment? It's in the very early stages, and I just want to know how, for an issue like that that is not directly town but affects the town, how we should respond to that. Thanks.
Okay.
Uh,
Bus track. Okay, we've had, this is our third question, and let's have Pat go first this time. I'm going to keep rotating it.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm Jay, so I'm not well versed on the kind of redevelopment you're talking about, but I can give you sort of a general statement when we are looking at our surrounding communities, and we're being pretty much compartmentalized by all of the development around us for many years. When I first moved to Washington Grove, I could get on my bike or take my car as far as Germantown, and the rest of it was open farmland. All the development that has happened around us is really kind of encroaching on us and encapsulating us. So I do think we need to be very mindful of how that impacts not only our community, but our surrounding communities, and how that impacts whether it's, racial equity or diversity or inclusion. I mean, all those issues that will directly or indirectly impact us. We are a porous community. We're open and welcoming. We would like other people to come, of all walks of life, come in. That's the way I was raised, is you treat others the way you want to be treated. What happens with outside development may not be under our direct control, but we can also look to informing our own town residents and also those in the surrounding communities about what to be watchful for, and make sure we don't have the negative impacts, but rather look towards what potential positive things can come out of some of that new development. So if there's anything more specific you'd like, I'd be happy to address those. But certainly part of being on the council is to be listening and have your antenna up and hear back from our town residents as to these are issues that are of concern. So bring those issues to the council so that we can be informed and help to make the right decisions for our town and our local communities.
Okay, Daryl.
yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jay. I did mention that because we've been discussing, mostly Paula and me have been discussing with the East Gaithersburg United group, which has contacted us to try to figure out how we can support them. And I think it's a council decision, obviously, but I think, well, individuals can hook up with that group also. It's going to be a fight. There's no doubt about that, because what we heard on Thursday night, I think, you know, it's going to be the same old thing. It's going to be lots of traffic and lots of, you know, the types of things although it's not next to us, it's going to impact us. And I think that we definitely need to, like, at this point, make contacts with them and support them, because they, you know, they're a small group over there. And as you know, Walnut Hill Shopping Center is in the county, but the Walnut Hill residences are in Gaithersburg. So part of their plan is to annex into Gaithersburg so they have an easier path to getting approval, because they felt like Montgomery County is too difficult to get approval for what they want to do. That's just one thing that we need to support this group
30 seconds.
as they go through it's not even in the planning stage yet. It's a theory. And but I think it's, you know, the earlier you get involved in it, the more impact we can have. So I think the main thing we can do, East Gaithersburg United group, to work with them. I'll find out, or, you know, Paul and I will find out when the next meeting is, and let people know. Thank you.
And Eva?
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. I wasn't able to make that meeting, but I'm very curious about what was being discussed, because I think, you know, there is an opportunity there. It's only about a mile away of having something there that residents want versus something there that residents don't want. And that if we can be a part of that process, I think it was wonderful that, you know, we got that email that I think Daryl sent out of, you know, here's the link to, or I guess we could contact East Gaithersburg group to go to their meeting. And I didn't realize that they had reached out to us. So all the better that they are, you know, looking to make a connection with us, and that we can, you know, work with them and be involved as much as we can to hopefully figure out something that makes everybody, well, nothing will make everybody happy, but you know, it does seem like Washington Grove is making more connections with the surrounding communities, and I think that's really great. And I think this is an opportunity for us to work with the surrounding communities, and hopefully, you know, like I said, it's an opportunity. There's a big empty store there right now, and you know something's going to go there, and what's going to happen to it. We need to be a part of that.
Thank you, Eva. You know, this is reminding me of sometime in the last couple of years when the DeVol Funeral Home proposed putting in a crematorium on a residential property immediately adjacent to them, which would actually be allowed under the Gaithersburg zoning laws, but which the residents in that area asked for support from the town to please help influence Gaithersburg not to let that go in. And I don't know exactly what the town did. I know the individual residents, myself included, wrote to Gaithersburg Town Council about it. But I think that Gaithersburg is relatively responsive, and that our town government can certainly do quite a bit to help influence the process. Okay, and I see we have a question.
Georgette, can I have 1 minute just to address this? Because
Yeah, absolutely, John. It's certainly something I'm very interested in.
yeah, well,
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
most of you some of you, many of you may know that when I became mayor in 2000, you know, we were dealing with, you know, internal issues, and, you know, we had a bunch of external border things hanging over us, but nothing was really going on. And then suddenly we had this huge development proposed on our border. And ever since then, we've had a series of impacts on the town. And really what the people in Gaithersburg, the residential area, are concerned about is the impact of proposed development in a commercial zone on a commercial street with current commercial use. They have a right to be concerned of increasing impacts on the residential quality of life, which is just the same thing we've been addressing sequentially: Town Crest redevelopment, the Humpback Bridge, the field over here. We didn't do such a good job at the Salt Barn, but all of those are impacts on our residential character of life. And there we can support. We come from the same position. Gaithersburg, and I think Gaithersburg will be responsive. Whatever is proposed there needs to be benign to the surrounding communities. In that respect, the town can weigh in as a town because we have that experience. So, I mean, that's really where we would be able to go. Individuals can say more, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, John. And Bob, your question?
Yeah, it's along somewhat similar lines in terms of future development. The county has come out with their long-term transportation plan. And part of that plan is running the metro all the way up to Germantown. And that would be right along the right of way of the tracks. That is quite, I kind of doubt that they're going to underground it. So that will have a really radical impact on the town and our access. In addition, one of the other recommendations was actually consolidating MARC, increasing the MARC traffic, but also eliminating some of the stations, adding stations and eliminating stations. And we would be very high on that list of eliminations. So could each of the, and John too, if all four of you, could you speak to what you think the town should do? It's somewhat of a long-term process, but in order to get on this bandwagon, so to speak, it seems like we ought to be doing something. And also, they did not even consult that I could see. They did not even attempt to consult with us in that process.
Let's see. Let's start with Daryl on this.
Yes, I think we need to keep up with this. We've always known that the red line might be extended and that would impact us. All we can do at this point is just stay involved. We have our contacts in the county, and that would be beneficial to us. I think it is a pressing issue for us, and would be fighting some pretty monumental type of agencies who would like to do this. So I think Bob is good to keep up with this. Thank you.
Okay. Eva, if you.
Yeah, I looked into this a little bit because I'm very curious about it. I think it's the corridor forward plan is what Bob's talking about. Yeah, and so I saw there's a lot of different options that could happen. So it is one of those things that, like you said, Bob, it's down the road and there's lots of different things being discussed. So it's just something, like Daryl said, that we stay on it, attend the meetings, make sure that we keep up with what's going on, and I guess, make sure that that we're involved when there's decision making to be done. But also, I think getting a pulse on what's important to residents. I know that it was one of the options was extending the red line, and I believe there would be a metro station at Old Town Gaithersburg in that option. and just getting a pulse on residents, would that be something that they would want or not want? You know, there's a lot of things to consider, increased noise and increased traffic, but also, you know, a closer metro stop. So it's really one of those things that, you know, we would want to find out how residents feel. But again, it's all so far in the future. I think at this point, it's just, you know, making sure that we're keeping our ear out and, you know, staying on it and staying informed.
And Pat?
So yeah, this one strikes home for me because I'm a MARC commuter rider. At least I was until we started teleworking for the past few years. But you know, I certainly advocate for the use of the MARC trains as they currently exist. There has been discussion about even, you know, widening the CSX tracks, et cetera. My suggestion though for this, even though it is early in its discussions, it is still a corridor forward plan. So the fact that they've put pen to paper means we need to pay attention. And I suggest not only because there've been a few initial meetings and there have been a couple of council members or other town residents who have tried to attend virtually or in person. Again, with COVID, it was complicated, is that we need to attend some of these ongoing meetings. Whenever they're scheduled, somebody needs to show up. Conversely, just like we did with the shared use path with the county, is we have them come and talk to us. We need to actually request that they come and give us an informational meeting in this town, because we will be directly impacted, especially if Metro is going to come straight through. It's going to efface Robert's Oxygen. It's just going to take out that whole section, including what might have been the shared use path at some point. I mean, all that will change. Okay, even though there's needs upstream and up county for that kind of public transportation, there needs to be alternatives. And some of that could actually be rolled over to I-270. They could actually create some kind of a metro rail or some other thing that would go up that way instead. So I really think we actually need to pay attention early and often. Now, that's my comment.
Great. And I did reserve you for last, John, because I tend to find that you are very good, among other things, at summing stuff up, in addition to your own opinion.
Well, hopefully I'm going to be that way with this one too, because as has been mentioned, and Bob started out, they're really, for Washington Grove, there are two components to this. The much more imminent one, and the one that I think will be a focus for the county initially, will be to expand MARC use. And that's going to impact us as well, depending on how that is done, whether it's increased frequency of trains or reorientation of stops or whatever. I think that will be the proximal project that the Corridor Forward plan emphasizes. So the second part, which is the longer term, of course, is extending the metro. That one, as everybody said, is a little bit farther off, but it's also very, there are huge issues with that. First one is money, but the next one is they've never extended metro through a residential neighborhood such as ours and Gaithersburg. If you look at it along the rest of the red line, it's either underground or it runs along 355 near the commercial development. So that's the first problem they're going to have, as it will dramatically impact us. But the second one is it also cuts off one side of the metro from the other when it runs on the surface. And that will have a huge impact on us and on Gaithersburg. So my recommendation there is to be very much in cahoots with Gaithersburg, who is not going to look kindly to an above ground, at least the current view of Old Town, and they will not appreciate having an elevator. So neither will we. And I think that is our best bet to addressing options for the red line. I don't think there's any question it should go underground for at least half a mile, but you know, it's so far in advance. We just need to keep up on it.
Okay, thank you, John. Since I don't see another hand immediately, I'll just say that I totally agree with pay attention early and and forcefully. Okay, I am not sure who, yes.
Judy.
Okay, since I actually see Judy waving her hand.
And over here,
let Judy
Ian.
go next. Who is Ian? I'm sorry, who is Ian? Well, go ahead, Judy.
So my question, and I guess it's mostly to the council, but I always love to hear what John has to say, and that has to do with how do we get more people involved in volunteerism in the town, and particularly young people in the town. And I guess playing into that is, what do you see as elements and why people have been chased away from being involved in committee activities and town activities?
Okay, let's start out.
Sorry, Georgette. I'm Ian.
Oh,
Ah, wait a minute.
okay. Thank you. You'll be going next. All right, Eva, for Judy's question.
Yeah, I do think part of it, it's been hard since COVID with everything on Zoom. You know, when we first moved here, there was a different social event every month, and we were going to the chili dinner and we were going to the Christmas play, and it was so much easier to meet people and find out about the different committees and get involved. So I do think, you know, there's been a lot of young families that have moved in the past 2.5 years, and I think they just don't know, you know, and so hopefully, you know, we can start doing more and more things in person, and that will help. I do think too, I know recently the rec, just as an example, the rec committee, I think had a link that they sent out where you could sign up to volunteer for various things. And somehow I just missed it. And a friend of mine said, you know, oh, did you see it? And she forwarded it back to me. So I think when things like that go out, sending them out in multiple ways, because people get so much email that if you just send out a volunteer opportunity or a volunteer, you know, call for volunteers once, it's very easy for it to go, you know, go in somebody's trash can in their inbox. So maybe something that goes out with every town bulletin, you know, here are ways to get involved. I know there are probably residents who don't read the town bulletin, so thinking of other ways that we can get people, but I honestly think the best way to get people involved is, I know we have the petting zoo coming up, just town events where, you know, residents can see, oh, this is what I could be involved with. And it has been so hard to do over Zoom. So yeah, that's a great question though. And I'm going to think more about it because I think that it's definitely necessary. So thanks.
Thanks, Eva. Let's see. Okay, Pat. Sorry, Pat Klein, please.
Yes, that's fine. I got it.
I'm sorry.
So, you know, I struggle with this myself. We are a town of volunteers, that's true. And when I first came into town, I was sort of recruited, you know, to join at that time the Woods Group, or now the Woods Committee. And I was interested to know what they were doing. And then once I got there, you know, it just became, it was already an interest of mine in general because it had to do with wildlife and habitat and forest and the trees. So I had an initial interest to incentivize myself. But one of the things I've learned, because when I'm over at Second Chance Wildlife Center, I've been a volunteer veterinarian for them for 20 years. And there's a sort of state of mind when you become a volunteer that you acknowledge that you're giving of your time, right? You're making a commitment. And not everybody can do that. So first I want to be kind and patient and understand that not everybody can multitask really well, okay? I mean, it's kind of a fallacy. But on the other hand, you have to nurture volunteers. And that's one of the things I've learned, because at Second Chance, that's also a place that works off of mostly volunteers. And when volunteers come and they give of their time, they also need to get something back. right? That's nurturing them. It's not just a reward, but in the case of, let's say, the Woods Committee or some of our town committees, they hopefully are learning something. When they go to that committee, they're not only giving of their time, but they're learning about why that is important, why that committee's work is important. How does it help the town? How does it better the town? What's the investment process? So it's a little complicated psychologically, but those of us who are on those committees have to remember that we have to give back to the volunteers to make it worth their time to be there and make them want to come back and do more. So that's the way I try to approach it in the other volunteer work that I do.
Pat, thank you. And Daryl?
Yes, one thing I learned in my 15 years on the Democratic Central Committee, which works on volunteers, nobody's paid, is that the best way to get volunteers is through contact, personal contact. I mean, sending emails, putting it in the bulletin, all those, they're good, but they're second and third level recruitment tools. When I have new people move in, I've had 3 new people since the COVID started. You walk across the street, you talk to them. I haven't done much of the talking without a mask, but you go across, you talk to them, you talk about, we have a multitude of things that could interest someone, the Lake Committee, Forestry and Beautification, the Woods Committee, on and on, recreation. We have all these things, and certainly one of them may be of interest to that person. And part of that visit, that contact, you talk about how the town operates. Yes, we have a mayor, yes, we have a council, but they're all volunteer. Everybody's volunteers here. We depend on getting people to volunteer. You want to, the chili supper, anything you can do. And what you do is you find that one thing that people have an interest in, and you go at that, and you invite them. You get the chair of that committee, or, to talk to them and say, hey, I hear you have an interest in something, come. And I think, and also what Patty's, keeping them engaged when they come to these committees or commissions is important. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Anne, you're up.
Okay, thanks. Kind of been following up with Janet's question about environmental issues. I'm interested in hearing what the candidates' thoughts are, interest in the question of allowing more open space to be available to pollinators. There have been some comments, I don't know if the candidates are aware of them, but there have been some residents who have suggested that the grass clippings do not need to be removed. So I would like to hear people's thoughts on that topic.
Okay, sorry. Anne, I'm probably losing track, but let's start with Daryl.
Okay. Yeah, we have a yard where we plant pollinator friendly everything constantly. And we have tons of bees around, but as far as the grass clippings are concerned, I don't know how that relates to that, but if the grass clippings are small enough, I think it's important. I mean, that's what I do in my own yard. I mulch mow so that it goes back into the soil, but it's very tiny pieces of grass. It's not long pieces of grass. So I believe in that we should mulch mow as much as we can. I think it's important. We've got to have pollinators, but we've also got to have something they can feed on. And so I don't think I think we should encourage people to plant pollinator friendly plants.
Okay. Eva?
Sure, yeah. I'm not sure if what Anna's referring to is the no mo may or something else. Patty's saying yes, it is. But yeah, I think this is interesting and something that I want to do further research on. And the town should certainly be looking at what we can do to be the most environmentally friendly that we can, and helping the bees and helping the pollinators. I wonder if this is something that the sustainability group could maybe put on a talk once, if they find somebody who knows about this. Like I said, I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And I'm also willing to, hear from other people and help the town figure out what is the most environmentally friendly and the best for our environment here. Thanks.
Thank you, Eva. And Pat?
So excited about pollinators. Thank you for asking that question. Just like Daryl, I've actually started a pollinator garden in my little yard. And so I think one thing that we can encourage town residents to do, just as Daryl has and probably some others, is everybody do their part. You can put a little pollinator garden in, butterfly bushes, milkweed, etc. So that's on the sort of private residence side. You know that the Museum of Natural History has actually got a huge pollinator project that they're doing. And if you ever go down to the Museum of Natural History in DC, they have a pollinator garden, out there in the side of the building. It's great. The other issue too, as far as how multiple committees in town could actually get together and really work on a common issue like this. So that's the Woods Committee, that's F&B, Forestry and Beautification, that's sustainability. So I'm starting to connect those dots, like I mentioned earlier, is that this can be a multi-purpose or multi-committee effort, and that brings in a lot more volunteers. So talking about the volunteer issue is getting people to go out there and do some planting. Actually, years ago, Betsy Klinger had us out in the conservation meadow. I remember planting milkweed and it was so exciting. So again, this could be a town-wide effort because it just takes a little to add up, right? And to make a big change. So thank you for asking that question. I love pollinators.
And I will say that the Sustainability Committee and Forestry and Beautification sponsored a talk by Bruce Daggy and his wife, Ann London, about sustainability in your yards and how to set up pollinator gardens. And I believe that the talk is available on the website. And there's also, to the best of my recollection, a list of local sources for planting the local native plants, which of course are going to be more suitable for pollinators. Okay, check the website.
And that was Ann Vincent rather than Ann London.
I keep doing that. I'm sorry. It's a bad holdover memory. Okay, and Ann Vincent and Bruce are there, and they have their hand up. So let's see what they have to say.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the plug for our talk. General question, would you support the next contract related to the last topic? Would you support the next contract for landscaping maintenance to make two changes? One would be reduce the amount of land that is mown. And this would be an opportunity to have some more pollinator-friendly planting on common land. And number two, requiring the use of electric equipment with limited exceptions. For example, if you really need that big chainsaw because the trees come down, okay, but otherwise, we're going to move to battery electric equipment instead of gas powered. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Okay, better start with Pat this time.
Goody. So thank you both Bruce and Ann for that question. I think I'll answer it a little bit in reverse order as far as landscaping contractors and promoting or incentivizing them to move towards electric equipment. And yes, I think that's a great idea. Now, the question comes from the town government perspective is, do we reject any other landscaper and most of them frankly have not converted, right? I mean, it's going to be a transitional process over time. You know, do we reject summarily one that comes in with a good bid and is, you know, well recommended, but doesn't have that equipment? Do we consider actually trying to work with them over the course of a contract to try to promote not only continuing the business with us, but getting them to move to these electric equipment and vehicles? So I think that's going to be a transitional process. I think we talked a little bit about this because they need to be incentivized. It's a business decision, right? And if most of their customers are starting to ask them to go in that direction, they're going to have to hear that and start to make those business decisions. But it's going to be an upfront investment for them. So I suggest that it's not an on-off switch, but it is a work in progress, that we would promote that and we would try to move them in that direction. So yes is the basic answer. And then as far as less mowing, please, I have to suggest that we have to understand where we're not going to mow is fine, but we also have to worry about things like ticks. And so when we talk about, you know, trails or walkways where people walk or
30
the
seconds.
dogs walk, we have to also worry about tall grass and things that could be hidden in tall grass like ticks that lead to Lyme's disease. So we just need to make sure we know what sections we might want to minimize some of that mowing for other protective reasons or other environmental reasons. So does that make sense? It's a little complicated, but I think if we go in that direction, it'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, and Eva?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Patty answered that question pretty well. These both sound like great ideas. You know, I think it would be something the council would have to look at, the landscapers and the pros and cons. And like she said, if we can work with certain landscapers, if they're willing to sort of phase things out over time, you know, phase out the gas powered equipment over time. Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. I hope that, yeah, I don't have too much more to add on that. Thanks.
Okay, great. And Daryl?
Yeah, having written up the RFP for the maintenance contract that we just awarded, during that process, I talked to multiple landscaping companies, and one of the questions I asked was, how feasible is it to use in your mowing electric power? And they all they rejected it out of hand. They said, you know, we're out there for 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. You know, they're not at the point when they could, they have enough battery power to go all day long, because once they come here and mow, they also take that machinery and go somewhere else and mow. Also, the expense of the electric, the big mowers, the really big mowers, is far exceeds what you pay for gas. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to try to move them to that. But I think it's, as both Eva and Pat, it's a process. I don't think we can just shut that off and say, well, we're going to put out a contract. If you're not going to do it by electric, we're not going to take you. I don't think we could get anybody to do that. As far as there are some things like the weed trimmers, which they certainly could go to electric, because those last longer and they don't do that much.
30 seconds.
Yeah. And as far as chainsaws, I haven't seen, Consumer Report doesn't have a long-lasting or incredibly heavy-duty chainsaw that's powered by electric, but it's coming. There's no doubt all that stuff is coming. So I think we need to stay on top of it. When we rewrite the RFP for maintenance, we certainly can include that as say that that's something that would give us, you know, give a benefit. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe I can just put a plug in here on this subject. What many communities are doing are addressing this with regard to things that really can be replaced efficiently by electric devices. And the first one out of the gate is leaf blowers. Chevy Chase has an ordinance that prevents the use of leaf blowers for certain parts of the year, and they require the use of electric leaf blowers otherwise. So one is to address the noise, less use of an inherently noisy a noisy device, but the other is to reduce the noise and go to renewable energy. So Christine Dibble, who's listening in, has expressed an interest in this. I passed her a few of the things that Chevy Chase's did in passing this ordinance. One of the things they did is they offered incentives to residents, it's kind of rebates. They also, it's either Chevy Chase or another municipality bought some electric blowers and rents them out, or they don't actually rent them, they sign them out to
30
residents.
seconds.
So those are small things. The lawnmowers are a serious problem with respect to electric substitution. I have a feeling that's coming. I mean, if you can do cars for 300 miles on an electric charge, you can certainly do a lawnmower for 5 hours. So, but
Right, that's what I was thinking.
All right. Very good. I'm not seeing hands at the moment. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, I think we've covered a lot of really good territory, and I appreciate all of you coming, particularly our council members. And I see that Bob Boer is here, and turnout has just been excellent. And all of the candidates, and including the mayor, have answered nobly. I appreciate it very much. So thank you.
But maybe before we go, Georgette,
Sure.
and this is your bailiwick. The council's public hearing on the comprehensive plan is on Monday night.
Yes.
The comprehensive plan had a lot of work went into it. A lot of town residents contributed to it, and it has at least two. One of the person, Charlie's here, and Mark Hansen have spoken out on two of the recommendations that are potentially controversial. So it's not all smooth sailing, I think, for the council, and it will be important for the new council, the current council for Monday, and whoever gets elected for the following month or May. We're going to have a second council meeting in May.
Yeah.
To address the comprehensive plan and understand what we must do and what we may do and what the plan tells us. So it's an important thing. We've been saying it. Georgette's been saying it. Everybody's been saying it. It does have it has a lot of ramifications for how the town goes about its business for the next 10 years. And we want to be sure that it is recommending the kind of things that we all believe was where we want our town to go.
Yes.
Just
So I look forward
John,
to
was
seeing
that,
everybody on Monday.
and real quick, just was the information that Mark sent in and Charlie, was that posted on the website? Is that for public viewing or no?
I believe
It will be available. All public hearing information input to the council is available. We're going to make sure it's available after the meeting on Monday night. I sent the council out instead of sending a packet of comprehensive stuff, I gave you all a link to a folder I have set up that has the information so far on the comprehensive plan as far as the town council has received. And there will be more. But yeah, that letter is among those. I didn't send it to you directly, but it's in that folder.
No, for the council, but I mean, for the rest of the town residents.
Right. Well, yeah, and
I believe that's on the website, John.
Okay.
Because Mark addressed it, and it's through
Previously.
Kathy. It's one of the letters that are listed on the website.
Okay, if that's because the latest one is the one we're talking about, not the one from last year. I mean, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you guys how to get there. Hold on a second.
Thank you, Christine.
Because if you, the comments to the actual the comprehensive plan are on the comprehensive plan page. So you go to town government and then it's the comprehensive plan page is here. And then there are, you know, documents.
There are
related to the
letters. I
submission
see
of
them.
Public comments now, but those are things that go to the planning commission because they are comments on the comprehensive plan. The thing that was sent to the town council, to see that, again, go to town government. And then under mayor and town council, click on that. And then here, under written testimony and correspondence, second bullet is all the correspondence from town residents to the mayor and the town council. And if you scroll down, this sort of explains what's in this table and what's not in the table. And here is the 10th letter we received this year is the one from
I see it.
Charlie and Mark and Georgette. You can see that your letter about holding the annual town meeting in person is also up.
Very
So
good.
I will relinquish my screen, and now that everybody knows how to find that information.
Well, and a big thank you to Christine for actually resuscitating the website. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes.
And actually making it useful.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Christine is one of our on town council too. I'd like to hear the people who were not up for re-election or for election to introduce themselves if they were on council, the council people, they're on here. Could you introduce yourselves and say what areas you are in charge of right now?
How about starting with you, Dave? Since I'm looking at this alphabetically, but
Okay, thank you. All right, as far as I can understand the question you're asking, what areas are we involved in? I have a couple of generic responsibilities for town contracts and for conservation meadow. I'm also council liaison to the Woods Committee and the Lighting Committee. And I'm a member of the EPSC.
great. And I realized that we just did it briefly, but Christine, do you want to say what you cover other than your incredibly beautiful website?
Sure. Let's see. I cover the planning commission, so that involves making sure that the council understand what the planning commission is doing and vice versa, and acting as liaison. I also do the dog park, which is really a very light load, and then website and communications. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that I've been attending meetings of East Gaithersburg United for the past 18 months and have been sort of an informal like town liaison, trying to work with them on issues where I think the town has an interest. And I would like to say that I did attend the Walnut Hill Shopping Center meeting, and what I came away with was the following. The new owners would like to put in a very large pad site on the south, I think it's southwest corner, which is the corner near the MVA Express. And they're thinking of something that would be like a big convenience store and gas station, something like a Sheetz or Royal Farms. They, in their estimation, that kind of use is a big draw to a shopping center and would benefit the other tenants. And they say that they have reached out to every shopping center chain in the in the United States, and no one has any interest in that space where the Food Lion was and the White, and after that, the Weiss was. In particular, because, Weiss sort of gave up on the space after about a year and broke their contract to basically get out of it. And it's just not seen as a great space. And so they think that having this sort of, Sheets or Royal Farms convenience, sort of 7-Eleven type place there is the way to go. And, I have no opinion about that. And so I will conclude by saying that I think it would benefit the town if one of the counselors, and I don't necessarily want it to be me, is officially a liaison to East Gaithersburg United, or if it's not a town councilor, then somebody else in the town would be going to every one of their meetings. And I also think that, we have an interest in making sure that East Gaithersburg is better represented than it is now within the city of Gaithersburg. If you look at who's on the Gaithersburg City Council, it's all people from West Gaithersburg. There's nobody from east of 270 on it. And it's just been very poorly represented. And they know that, and they are struggling. They're a new organization. They're struggling, and they could use all the help that they can get.
Wow. Well, thank you. Appreciate that update, Christine. And how about you, Barbara?
Hi, everybody. I'm Barbara Raimondo. I am the town council liaison for the Racial and Social Equity Committee, Forestry and Beautification. I cover the town hall and also Shady Grove Crossing. And I'm happy to say that RASIC does have a good connection with East Gaithersburg United. There is one of the leadership members of that team is from East Gaithersburg United, and she's also very knowledgeable about things like statistics and gathering information. So she's been very helpful on that committee. So that's about me.
Fabulous. And I think the last council member would be Gray Yatchup. You may not be here. Charlie, do you know?
No, he's not in attendance. No.
Okay. So we're all set. I, again, appreciate everybody's attendance, and it's been great to see you and great to meet the candidates.
Georgette, can I say just one last thing?
Sure, Eva.
I was thinking about the question that Judy posed about how to get more young people involved. And I realized, I don't know why I didn't think of this at first, but of course, like I said, coming in contact with people in person, but also, gosh, when residents came to me and said, you should consider running for town council, I don't think that I would have come to that conclusion so quickly on my own. So I think really, making friends and being friendly, and, I know when new people come in, especially when they have kids, I am going up to them and asking them if they want to have play dates with me and my kids and making friends. And then the next step is just to say, hey, would you be interested in, some of the volunteer opportunities? So anyway, I just wanted to say I think making friends and being friendly and making connections is the way to go.
Yeah. Honestly, I think everything's going to be better as the COVID restrictions relax. The more people can actually see each other. And we're coming up on a really good time right now when we can be outside, and even people who are very paranoid about COVID, like myself, I don't mind being outside in a well-ventilated environment and talking to people. And I hope everyone else feels.
Well, they're just blabbing now.
Okay. Yes, we're just blabbing now.
So I want to say thank you to everybody. We have a shared vision. We're all respectful and friends and neighbors. So thank you all very much for giving us the opportunity to present our views with you.
Super. And I'm going to end the meeting now. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the great opportunity. Bye.
Thank you all.
Really appreciate it. Bye.